You see, we should do serious work in rehearsing the concerto, which we are going to perform. But as you are
in Vienna, Strauss is just as serious.
In the footsteps of Johann Strauss, tell me one thing which you have in common.
Very little, unfortunately.
But no, you see, he had an orchestra. You have an orchestra.
Yes.
He was a violinist. You are a violinist.
But he
composed.
He
was a composer. Well,
yes.
This is the difference. But now, as you perform in, let's say, 3 different ways, what do you find difference? First, you have your orchestra, which accompanies you playing violin concerto. Secondly, you might have a conductor which accompanies you and from whom you know he will accompany you in the mood, in the spirit of the work. And might be you're not so lucky with somebody who does the contrary. So how do you feel the difference in those 3?
Well, I look for the greatest harmony, the greatest inspiration when I have the conductor, like you or a great conductor, who not only accompanies but contributes with his own thoughts, and not necessarily the very same ones, because different thoughts, different conceptions can lead to even more interesting and exciting performances. Then I'm quite happy and I don't want anything else. On the other hand, there is something to be said for having the full responsibility of a great work of music, even if one does not live up to that responsibility, because I know I have very little experience as a conductor. But I feel that it's a liberation in many ways from the years spent concentrated on a narrow fingerboard.
Now, being confronted with an orchestra which is, of course, much bigger than the one you used to conduct, what is your feeling? Is it something different, or is it part of yourself?
Well, I haven't had that much experience that I can pretend that it is automatic, that it is absolutely as automatic as, say, it is with you, where it appears to be only an extension of your hand.
Of your hand, yes.
Exactly. But nonetheless, when one shares with the musicians a common conception, yes, if they seem to be convinced and they feel the same way as you would like them to feel, yes, then something can still happen even in the hands of as inexperienced a conductor as I am.
But now, in the rehearsal, you see, this is the important thing. If the basic elements of music, and it applies for a very good orchestra and for a not so good orchestra, will always be the same, and some sort of pattern of 12 words, too long, too short, too high, too low, and will basically make the whole difference, yes, in the form of the music. There had always been said that a melody is to be aptly and artistically interpreted is not so much the notes, but the intervals between one note and another one, which make a legato or a staccato, everything. Those things are so important to learn.
Do you know the saying of Lao Tse, which refers exactly to this fact that it is the intangible which creates the essence of a thing and not the tangible? He says it's not the spokes of a wheel that make the nature of a wheel, it's the space between them. It's not the walls of a house that make a house, it's the space within the walls. And that is very much the same thing. The technique are the walls and the spokes. It's essential too, but the attitude behind the technique, the vision which you have of the music, is what has to be transmitted.
And it's exactly what Woody said, from the intervals between, it's the space between the notes, which makes the music in this. But speaking from rehearsing, if you rehearse with your chamber orchestra, do you play for them?
Sometimes I illustrate.
Yes.
And I always find it's a great satisfaction to be able to do that. It creates, because with this little chamber orchestra, there is hardly the feeling that I am a conductor. I'm really more or less one of them.
Of them, yes.
And whereas with a big orchestra, it's entirely different. It wouldn't be.
I'm not so sure. You see, of course, there's a moment where
But then you sing, don't you?
Well, you see, I've not a voice of Chalepin.
But it's not necessary.
Sometimes they don't even understand me. Sometimes I speak so fast that they are asked, do you understand everything that Mr. von Karajan says? They say no, but what we don't understand, we guess. And as the guesswork goes on since 10 years, so
the guess is pretty accurate.
It's pretty accurate. One thing we haven't talked about is, before an orchestra, if the orchestra feels that you want something which you cannot express, you will never get a result.
No.
You might be able to get away with everything, but not with the uncertainty that you don't know what you want and how the sound should be.
Do you ever find that the orchestra gives even more or slightly differently than what you expect, and that is in itself an inspiration?
Oh, yes, and this is maybe the biggest inspiration. Everything is, let's say, established. We feel on the same way, but now comes the impulse. And I know it, and this is why I admire my own orchestra so much, because on everything which might be fixed and established, the moment you start to make music in the concert, something unexpected will come out. In the means of no bow player, whom you know how he should play his phrase, but he will do it in a different way.
Well, that is the joy of making music.
And this is the joy, and this is only the moment where 100 men become one body. It's like a thing which I always are fascinated in watching flight of birds, a big one, who move in one direction and in the other without, of course, anybody leading them. It's a sort of mass feeling which does instinctively the thing with utmost precision and with the utmost beauty and grace. And this is exactly what happens to an orchestra. It becomes an own body. Now, because we have talked, now we will have our rehearsal.
We will put our words into practice.
And we'll put our words into practice. Let's go to it.
I'm looking forward to it.